person running for office uses that exclusively in what they say to win office. No matter what party they're in or what they use that vocabulary to win, even though mostly it's a lie, or all of it's a lie.
It can be a lie. I'll agree with that. It can be. And many folks do. You know, about our cherished national symbols and emblems, it's real hard to argue against them. It's real hard to argue against the Star Spangled Banner, the national anthem. There are certain things that trigger genuine patriotism in any of us. And you can think of some other symbols that are valuable the way they were originated and when they serve a good purpose, that can be perverted to seek social or political power. Right? So there's the key. Is something being used to gain power for the person who's using it? Good example. Others, treacherous use of patriotic vocabulary.
Well, it's not vocabulary, but just the displaying of the Maryland flag has become polarized.
Can be, yeah, depending on how it's used or abused. Yeah. It becomes kind of a litmus test, doesn't it? You know, Jenny and I don't fly an American flag as a rule. I have one. Actually, I gave mine away because the scouts had been at a previous church were trying to keep up with the flag, and it was on a pole that was so high the wind just beat it up. And so I had a nice one that I knew was durable that my grandmother gave me because it had flown over the Capitol. You know, there must be tens of thousands of those flags that flown over the Capitol for 45 seconds. And I had one, so I gave it to the church, and they still flying. But that can be an abuse, you know, but especially when neighbors can put out a flag, maybe you suddenly look down on the neighbors that don't. What's wrong with you? Aren't you an American? Aren't you proud of your country? Don't you want to show the neighborhood? Yeah. Susan? The South will rise again. Oh boy. Yeah, that's talk about a mix of images. Or as they say, the old Kentucky Colonel, forget heck, only he didn't say heck, right? I'm not going to forget.
You want to get on a horse
And ride off into battle. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll keep these notions in mind as we go along. Yeah, there we go. All right. I think all of you know who General Milley is, and this is him after a number of events that happened during the previous administration, the previous Trump administration. And this speech was given during the 4 years in between now and back then. So I don't know the location of this speech, but this is just a textual.
I'm taking oath to a tribe. I'm taking oath to a religion. I'm taking oath to a king, a queen, or a tyrant, or a dictator. We don't take an oath to a wannabe dictator. We don't take an oath to an individual. We take an oath to the Constitution, and we take an oath to the idea that is America, and we're willing to die to protect it. Every soldier, sailor, airman, marine, guardian, coast guard, each of us commits our very life to protect and defend that document, regardless of personal price.
Powerful excerpt from a speech. Here's a man who had a lifetime of dedicated service to his country, a leader, rose through the ranks, someone who has unquestioned leadership capacity and is respected widely in the military ranks. And he's together that uniquely American understanding of making a promise or an oath to uphold the Constitution, not to give fealty or loyalty to any party or any nation, unless it's through the Constitution. Now, he does speak of America and the idea of America, but he says the Constitution first. So when we want to know what our idea of America is, according to General Milley, we would turn to the Constitution. And so there's, in his eyes, there's something very special and unique about that produces an important guardrail that we dare not go over. And so his point, I think, would be that anyone or anything, and you know who his comments were directed to, but anyone or anything that wants to obliterate those constitutional guardrails, the checks and balances, limits on power, the role of the judiciary, the role of the people through the Congress, the role of the executive, all that's spelled out in the Constitution. And we didn't flaunt that. Those that would flaunt that for any of those two branches, a judge, a congressperson, a president, if you flaunt that, you're starting to pull from the notion of America as a constitutional democracy. Now you're moving towards nationalism. You can define with your own power at the center of your concern, you can define what a nation will be. So interesting comment. Did you bring anything else from his remarks? Anybody want to add anything to that? All right. Well, let's keep on moving. I got enough of these last ones, but we won't get along. Let me set this up. This is a promotional film that was made in the late 1940s, reflecting on the world scene and totalitarian regimes. And this man with the accent is coming from all of those, and he's come to America. He's an American citizen now, and he's reflecting on this. And in this clip, you'll hear a little bit from the speaker they're listening to, right out in the middle of a town square in somewhere in America.
What's the answer? What are we real Americans gonna
do? Hard to hear. We got a moment. Let me turn this up so we can hear a little bit better. I think this will be better. Got it up as far.
What's the answer? What are we real Americans gonna do about it?
Excuse me, are you actually going to read that stuff? Yes, I will.
And I'm telling you, friends, we'll never be able to all country our own until it's a country without. Without what? Yeah, without what? Without Negroes. Without alien foreigners. Without Catholics. Without Freemasons. You know this.
What's wrong with the Masons? I'm a Mason. He was talking about me. And that makes a difference. I was born in Hungary, but now I am an American citizen. And I have seen what this kind of talk can do. I was a professor at the university. I heard the same words. But I was fooled then. I thought Nazis were crazy people, stupid fanatics. But unfortunately, it was not so. You see, they knew that I could control So in Germany, small groups, they used back. That's what I need to do. They had to work hard to do it. Human beings are not born prejudices. Always they are made for us, made by someone who wants something. Remember, there is one talk. Somebody who can get something.
Sorry, I'll turn it down in a second. Powerful, powerful notion. That goes all the way back to 1946, so far back. We've been dealing with this this expression of nationalism for a long, long time. And I found it interesting as I was listening to this several times, and the guy up on the grandstand was, uh, without what? He starts naming, Negroes, right down the list of his prejudices, including the Freemasons. And then the guy spoke up about it. I thought of the really poignant quote by a German theologian pastor right after World War II. He survived the war, and one of his famous quotes, his Neimold, he said, "When they came for the communists, I didn't say anything. I didn't stand up. When they came for the trade unionists, I didn't stand up because I'm not a trade unionist. When they came for the Jews, I didn't stand up or say anything because I'm not a Jew. But when they came for me, there was nobody left to stand up." So you see how some forms of nationalism kind of take a progressive approach. It's almost like putting a frog in water for boiling. If you turn up the heat slowly and keep the frog in the water, he'll never know that it's getting boiled. So it's that kind of insidious of a lot of nationalism that leads to this sort of talk. You also can see from this how whiteness, I'll call it, say, racial prejudice, religious bigotry, and nationalism just get all mushed, all in a speech like the one that the guy was trying to give. And this is part, the gentleman who had lived somewhere near it, was reminding him of what he saw, either in Germany or somewhere near it, during the time of the Nazi. Other thoughts that came to you as you listened to this clip?
Now, this is just an observation. Carol and I had talked to people around the community that are from this country originally, from Russia. They're afraid. They see what's going on. They're really afraid.
Yep. Teresa, you can comment on that in your work, with your family, right? That they're fearful. And you're fearful. Yeah.
I mean, I've been pulled over by the police and he said, "Do you have a green card?" And I thought the question should be, you go to the license. And so I said, "Pull out my passport because I can't let where I go." And he said, "Oh, you have a license." So I said, "You speak one language, you twist your tongue. So I have a license and you have a license." So, man, so, I have
Other comments? Carol wants to speak.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I spoke to someone else that had a similar situation, and when they stopped, the reason was the car was broken. And it was a factory car, it wasn't anything that we done differently, but it's just an occurrence that I wouldn't have had that happen to me.
This is a journey. I've always thought before that I could not understand how people stood up to the Nazis. I just couldn't grasp that. It was just, how could, why didn't they say anything? And in the museum, they had recordings, not necessarily recordings of the people who said it, things that people said had been verbalized. And one of the things was just that, it was that they didn't hurt them, so they didn't do anything about it. And then it came, when it came down to it, it's like, well, the people who did respond were eradicated, so there was no response because people were afraid to. I think the whole idea was that there were so many different things going on that people couldn't really wrap their head around what was actually going on.
Yeah, fear is such a powerful weapon. And if you can develop fear in a population or in a people, then you can really manipulate. Um, I used to think, why would, in most cases, a woman with children stay in a relationship in her home? Why would she do that? Until I took the time to listen to some persons who suffered abuse and the agony they went through, the cycle of fear and paralysis. In other words, there was a lot at stake. They wanted to protect their children, but they weren't sure they wanted to go on their own. They didn't think they had an option. And number two is their home. Just like your homeland is your home. And there are people who live up in the western North Carolina mountains who had their homes washed away, but they don't want to live anywhere else. That home or that road is their home. And so someone who can manipulate the fear as well as the allegiance to a place or a home or a house, boy, they can really keep people trapped in some destructive situations. Other comments on this one? Sure.
It's how we're living right now. I live in fear. I'm afraid of us in a country. I think that I know everybody else feels that way, but and it's something exactly what you're saying. And thinking too, like the congressman, they lay their hand in the Bible when they take the oath of office to do what? To protect the Constitution. Guess what?
There seems to be a whole lot of non-upholding and non-protection, attacking the Constitution instead. Yeah. Anyone else got a comment?
So trust, because you don't know who to trust.
Mm.
So,
Like now, at the center, here where we have kids, when somebody knocks on the door, I'm the only one that can go to the door. Because we don't know who's. And a lot of parents are afraid to bring their children because somebody's going to come and take them away. So when somebody knocks on the door, they go and take a key. I was even thinking today that I need to ask permission to put a camera so we can see who is approaching. We do have officers that come to volunteer for us sometimes. And now I told them, can you street closed and not where police uniform. So that trust of not knowing, like at my house, I'm really afraid because my neighbor is really different from most people, and he's put a gun on me once because I had a guy, a Spanish guy, that came to cut a tree. So we went across to pick the land, and he brought his gun, and he said, "Get these Mexicans out of my yard, I'll kill you right now." I got my name. I said, please, and I will, I was really difficult. And so I'm scared to do truth outside,
Mhm.
to do it.
Yeah.
So, because I don't know if I can just stand to, I said, I'm sorry. Of course, it's a big part of it for me.
Absolutely. And by the way, I don't know if any of you had anything to do with putting those peepholes in the education front door or in the door that goes out to Rita's garden, but we use them and they're very helpful, as you just learned. So thank you, whoever did that. Let's move on and take a look at the next clip, because to your comment, Teresa, I've got a great image for that, but it's several more slides down. Okay. Can we see that? Good. This is more to the point of fascism, which is one type of government or political approach of governing. And these are some early warning signs of fascism. Powerful and continuing nationalism, disdain for human rights, identification of enemies as a unifying cause, supremacy of the military, rampant sexism, controlled mass media, obsession with national security, religion and government intertwined, corporate power protected, labor power suppressed, disdain for intellectuals and the arts, obsession with crime and punishment, rampant cronyism and corruption, fraudulent elections. Now, these aren't necessarily in any particular order, like from top to bottom or bottom to top. Other than like this could have been written as part of the, Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto, but it also, if you connect it to our tradition and our Constitution, look how many of these move in the opposite direction of the Constitution. Um, a disdain for human rights. We call the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments of the Constitution, disdain for human rights. An obsession with national security. Well, the Constitution puts limits on how we may go about creating national security. Religion and government intertwined. The founders, it's not actually in the Constitution, but the founders, particularly Madison and Jefferson and the others, they recognized real danger there, and they put up what we call that firewall, separation of church and so that the state would not meddle in the affairs of religion, and that the government would keep itself, apart from religion it can be a guiding principle to those who are elected to government, but it shouldn't be because they're part of a particular denomination. And so there's a separation of those things. Labor power suppressed. The Constitution makes allowance for redress of grievances. And said through the judicial, particularly the courts, the judiciary, anybody can bring a case, be heard, have their day in court. Sometimes the little guy does win out over the big guy. A disdain for intellectuals and the arts. Is that because the arts are dangerous? Is that because the arts are dangerous and the free expression of folks' creativity can sometimes lead people to have ideas and thoughts that may be threatening to the ruling party or the ruling government? Then we can go on and on. You may see some others here that you'd like to kind of comment on. I know that in Nazi Germany, there was a very powerful, today I think we call it sexism, but there was a very powerful and narrow definition of what it means to be a mother and bear children, preferably blue-eyed, blonde-haired children that can become, part of a Nazi party, and if necessary, go and fight. And so if you had a lot of daughters, well, they would grow up to produce more babies. If you had they would become leaders and soldiers and engineers and other things that government or the country needs. So when we see today some folks saying concerned over the birth rates of the West in the West, the Western cultures, America, Europe, that our birth rates are going down. And if the birth rates of folks who aren't of European descent are going up. So, oh my goodness, what sort of racism is embedded in that? We want more babies, but we want more white babies. So where did that come from? You know, it comes out of fear. Fear that the future may be going. Fear that we may lose our hold, some power. We may lose our grip on being the majority in the dominant culture. So there's quite a danger there. You can start slipping towards that. Other comments or thoughts about these points? Danger warnings. Yeah, Nancy.
They already have started in mass media. I mean, that's going on now. Trump wants to choose which outlets get to be a part of the various lawsuits that have been brought to different media that have spoken out against something that he's for. And to me, that's scary in itself because it's so not what we do here.
Tim had a comment. Yeah. I'm gonna turn that sound down.
In a democracy, people are welcome, and people who are different are respected, and that kind of feeling is promoted. But with this sort of stuff, there's very much an othering and a suspicion, so that I make it afraid to talk to anybody because people are trying people in. And there's a real hesitancy to reach out beyond your group.
Well, I think any of us could pick out signs of Nazism. We probably need to name 5 or 6 of them. But I think a real bellwether of Nazism is in a democracy is a lack of prosperity. You look at Germany. You look at Germany after the Versailles Treaty in World War I. Essentially, they were because of reparations, and then so. In that situation, it would be very easy for a charismatic leader to come along and say, hey, this is what we have to do. We have to establish our place in the world. And that's exactly what's happening today. We've had, ever since the 80s, our prosperity has been going downhill because of globalism. And we've seen not just the current administration and the one before last, but we've seen all the way back to Ronald Reagan, a decrease in our prosperity in this country. And it has given rise to what we see today. And, we've had COVID, we've had inflation, and all those things, again, hurt prosperity. And that's really driving the situation today, I think.
Yeah, Jimmy.
I think if you look at any of these, to a larger extent or smaller, something going on. Every item up there, you can make an example of it.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out why Trump decided to put himself in charge of the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts.
That's what I want to say.
If you just say there's no money for it, close all sorts of stuff, can't you? And to your point, the irony of billionaires telling us, don't stop us from getting even richer. We'll help you become rich. And when 70 million, if 70 million people believe that they're going to become a billionaire, we got a problem. Because 70 million people ain't going to become a billionaire. There's such a concentration of wealth in the world and in our country.
That goes all the way back to Newt Gingrich.
Oh, yeah.
I've floats on both sides.
Lifts all ships? Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've heard that all my life.
We know what the
Other comments? All right. I think you'll all know this man. You may have various opinions about him, but I love this quote. Every society is found in how they treat their weakest and most helpless citizens. Jimmy Carter. Now, he'd be quick to tell you he's not the first one to say that or have that thought. But that comes directly from Matthew 25, where Jesus says, "When you do it, these things unto the least of these, my brothers, done them to me." So here's a president of the United States and a politician. All his life he was a politician. And he connects his faith and his politics and public policy in such a unique way. I wish it wasn't so unique, but the measure of society is found in how they treat their weakest. So I know a church that went through a process like all churches do, kind of re-evaluating their, and particularly their mission. And they decided that they were going to base it on Jesus' teaching. Sheep and goats, you're the least of these. And they said, our number one goal in our community, our region, in our world is to relieve suffering, however and wherever we encounter it. And they turned their people loose to just start a practical way to work to relieve human suffering. You say, so finding ways to help the weakest and the most helpless is a powerful Jesus-oriented or Jesus-originated idea that comes right out of our faith. Any comments about that? This is the most uplifting quote of the whole night. All right. Now this clip is really kind of hard hitting, and it does allude to the recent inauguration of Mr. Trump and the Trump administration. But it is a reflection. Chris Hedges is a libertarian, he's a pastor, and he's in an interview reflecting on signs of Christian nationalism in the current state of things.
Reading the phrase. President Trump, who said that they declare that no weapon formed against Iran, that every tongue that rises up against them and not be for evil could be a scripture from Isaiah. Donald Trump. We hear from the Washington,
This is the sacralization of human. Churches work like this. You have much better seats than you do in Presbyterian church. Comfortable, they kind of, and light, feel good. That is what she calls conflation. And it's more inside. Right. Interesting. And are to equip church established Germany whose side better? This very in that class. We talked about why, because with give you a kind of and can't wait.
Oops. Hold on. So, I love that last thought about magical thinking. I find myself reminding me and you all the time that particularly when we have a prayer healing service, that the oil that we use, or the water that we use in baptism, or the ashes that we use in ash winds, the bread and the cup that we use so regularly, none of that is magic. They may be means of grace, but we know who's offering the grace. It is Christ our Lord, not a magician. Jesus never promised magic. In other words, there's suffering in this world, and he doesn't just snap his fingers and take all our pain away. What he does promise to do is walk with us through the circumstances and the pain and the suffering and difficulties that we face. God promises to never abandon us, not to offer us magic. And I like as Chris Hedges made that point about that. He said other things as well. What resonated with you from his remarks? Sarah, wait for the mic if you would.
I thought it was interesting last week about some congressmen and I was like, the thing that bothers me most about our nation right now is that so many Republican senators and representatives are not saying it. And but what tore me up is how they're connected and then so representatives, I'm not sure which one, those tests to people who desperately need food, they still run and pray. And I'm just, whoa, what is going on? That was very troubling to me.
Yeah, that phrase, we use it in the church. My thoughts and prayers are with you. Should only be uttered in the context of, I'm willing to walk with you, stay with you, support you. Otherwise, my prayers and thoughts don't mean a thing and are empty. If that's all we can offer, it's political. Every time, 20 kids are slaughtered in a classroom because some madman who got a hold of an automatic weapon and decided to use it that way. Our only response is my thoughts and prayers are with you. Said it from Washington. That's a problem. That's a problem. Other comments from this clip.
Examples of that in the video. My dad, well, both my parents grew up Catholic, and after the assassination, there are all these photos, Craig's Worth on here, right? About, invite God and thinking, just trust my God. There's all these images of Mary, the Blessed Virgin, pushing the Trump. And I said, yeah, she pushed it. Trump, all the kids in the schools. That's how people follow it.
Yeah. You shouldn't forget the people who were wounded and one man killed by that Norwegian man's rifle fire. Other comments? Okay, we're doing good. I want us to, this clip, maybe it belongs more in the conversation around whiteness, but again, all this stuff tends to merge together. But talking about Native American folk, indigenous peoples, however you want to name them, First Nations. We mentioned maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago that phrase manifest destiny. And if we're going to talk about nationalism, then we have to be honest about our national history. There's wonderful things about American history. Marvelous overcoming of obstacles and odds and hardships, the amassing of great industrial wealth, uh, uh, jobs provided to millions and millions of people, a better life for millions and millions of people. And so I don't want to gloss over those things, and we keep those before us as well. There are plenty of reasons to be glad and proud to be an American. I don't want to live in any other country. But my dad used to say, my country, right or wrong, but he would recognize when he thought it was wrong. And I think any of us can do that. And so when it comes to the story of how white European folk, background folk treated the people they found already living here in America during the 17 and 1800s, especially, right up until today, that is a story and a tragic story. So just take a look at this and we'll reflect on this a little bit.
We were never alcoholics. That poison was brought to us. We were never poor or starving. That came when they stripped away our right to hunt, trap, and fish, cutting us off from the land that sustained us. We were never lost spiritually. We had our traditions, our connection to the Creator, and a way of life that didn't rely on money. We traded, we shared, and we thrived as self-sufficient communities. We never took a child from their family because of hardship. We lifted each other up. Our sense of community, pride, and gratitude for the Creator's gifts was unshakable. But then they came, lying, manipulating, and forcefully taking everything we knew and loved. They displaced us, destroyed our ways, and told us we had to assimilate for their benefit, not ours. We warned them that a time would come when they could no longer control us, when their greed and destruction would turn on them. That time has arrived. We're still here, rising from the ashes of what they tried to destroy. Our resilience and spirit cannot be broken. Let this be a reminder. The strength of our people endures.
Okay. If you've been watching, and some of you may be better versed in this than I am, but First Nation people, indigenous folk, and their descendants who are alive today are reclaiming their personhood and their place in American history and are naming, the injustices, but are also leaning into hope. That phrase, "we're still here," we are still here, has a lot of power to those who speak it, who have Native American heritage. Think of the wisdom that many of us grew up with that included some reflection from Native American cultures. Never criticize a person until you walked a mile in his what? Moccasins, right? I love the story of the Native American grandfather talking to his grandson. His grandson says, I can't always do what I think is right, and sometimes I do the very thing I don't want to do. Kind of sounds like the Apostle Paul. And he said, it's as if there are two wolves that are battling inside of me. And the grandfather says, you're exactly right. There are two wolves in each one of us. One is noble, white, it's not a racial category, with clear eyes and a proud bearing, and is fair and just and good. The other one is dark and red and snarling with beady eyes and slinks around a lot. And they fight each other from time to time. And the young grandson says, which one will win? And the grandfather says, you know the answer, the one you feed. The one you feed is the one that will win. So, oh gosh, there's so many. I used to love in Scouts, the Native Americans saying, when we talked about being in a place and then moving on to another place, in that place where you were, Leave only footprints, break only silence, take only time. Right? What a marvelous, balanced, and generous way of thinking about existing in the world. Not just looking after the natural world, but looking after your fellow human beings. Leave only footprints, break only silence, take only time. So there's a lot of this wisdom born out of a lot of suffering that is still in our culture. Comments about this? Anybody here got some? And I'll admit I've got some Cherokee heritage in my DNA. Anybody got any Native American or First Nation heritage that you know about? That you know about? You do, Catherine? No? Okay. You've been told? Yeah. Mine comes through my paternal grandmother. She had lived in Texas and was from Texas, but came as a fairly young girl to North Carolina. But yeah, the story always was that she told is that I think she had a grandparent who was at least one half or more Cherokee, and had that person's ancestors had been on the Trail of Tears and had been displaced out to Oklahoma and Texas, and that's where that family then propagated and so forth. Anybody else? Yes, Carol.
I don't have any Indian ancestry that I know of, but I did want to say something. There is a podcast that we learned about from Chuck Collier called Seen on Radio, and there's like 12 episodes, but when we don't really think about ourselves as white people, because that's just the dominant group, so we're just like people. Think about it. Other people, they don't have that same sense. They always think about themselves as, well, I'm a person of color, or I'm, Hispanic, because they live in a society that's not dominant society. So anyway, I just wanted to recommend the podcast because it really gives you a lot of information. And one thing is that DNA system, when they did the scientific examination of our DNA, that somebody in Africa is related to more readily than they are to a neighboring country in Africa. But the human genome showed that we're all the same. But we have our heads around it because we've been educated that we're different. Now that is dominant or not. So anyway, if you listen to the podcast, it's called Seeing White, like 12 episodes. And there's out of university. And there are two people that host is John Nealon and I can't pronounce the other fellow's name, Jerry Nikki, but they're both very highly educated people, and it's really fun to listen to it because it gives you a lot of information. And that's all I'm going to say.
You can comment again if you want. Yeah, it's interesting. The sociologists and anthropologists will tell us that we're all related, all the way. If you go back far enough, like hundreds of thousands of years, we all come from a dark-skinned grandmother who lived in sub-Saharan Africa. That's where we all come from. And some of us moved so far north or south that we got into climates that were less hospitable than sub-Saharan Africa. And so our skin turned white or pink or lighter shades. And others of us moved to regions of the earth where you eat a lot of food because you're near the ocean or near the river. And their skin turned a little yellowish. But all go back to a dark-skinned grandmother in sub-Saharan Africa. I just think that's so enlightening for us to see. Boy, the 5 fingers, blood, right up here, goes down there. We have so much in common than the things we want to fight over. We really are a family, a human family. and really one race, the human race, as they say. So well, we can get a lot more into that. Other comments from this clip? Anybody? Okay, you want to watch one more? There's always one more. This is our friend Tim Wise. We've heard from him before. That's hard to hear. Let me turn this up. Come on back here.
I wonder if I just put the mic up to the speaker.
Yeah. Feedback out over your ears.
As people of color liberated from race and racism, whose enemy and will continue to suffer the death of human infants. For children, child, white supremacy sacrifice and
So if we didn't suppress it, we couldn't live with ourselves. If we didn't suppress the white supremacy, maybe that's the thing about whiteness that you were alluding to it, Bill, that's so difficult, is we're very good at denial and suppressing the darker notions and the more evil and selfish ones. And to the point where if we're swimming in that water, we don't know what fresh air is. You know, if the only thing we're breathing are noxious fumes, then we don't really know what life is or fresh air is. So we're kind of have to work to unstick ourselves from this plague that is like, that's not the same thing as being American. It's not the same thing as being a capitalist. And it's not the same thing as being well off. Those are all different categories that have their own place. But that sense of whiteness, where the predominant culture, and it's sort of like a soup that I can go days and days and not have a conversation or encounter or even see a darker skinned person. That's how predominant we are. I know I'm going back to our session on whiteness, but there's part of the danger anyway. Other reflections you may have on Tim Wise's comments.
I went to the post office today in the package. I walked right up to the counter, handed the package in, and a gentleman behind me, a black gentleman, said, "Thank you for your service." He talked for 10 minutes. His name is Mike. My name is Mike. As I left the post office, a very old black gentleman came in and I held the door for him so he could get in easily. And I thanked him for his service. He took my hand and said, "Thank you." I truly believe we don't ever want to put ourselves out there. Until we do, those good things aren't ever going to happen.
Good point. Just staying awake, paying attention. That's really what prayer, spiritual life is all about. Jesus says it over and over. Hey, look, watch, listen, I'm about to show you something. Our job as followers is to pay attention to what God is up to and what God is doing. Sometimes that means holding the door for an older fellow. Sometimes it means striking up a conversation in line at the post office. In Brevard, the post office and the town dump were the two places, because I had to go there every day to take my garbage. And the post office every day to get mail. Those are the two places I did all my business. That's where everybody was. Didn't matter what you looked like, how old or young you were, what color your skin was, whether you were rich or poor. We were all doing the things we needed to do to survive. And we were, had that in common. Yeah. Somebody else have a comment? Sure, Mike.
Well, I just wanted to point out that I think he's wrong about it, that we don't all have empathy. It's a sliding scale that runs from empathy, altruism, all the way up to psychopathy. And some people are absolutely incapable of having empathy. And I think that there's a middle ground somewhere where it can be learned, but there are people on either end that they just don't exist, or just they have exact opposite.
Sure looks that way to me too, just observing humanity. It does appear that some people that really struggle outside of their own skin, their own narcissistic sort of existence, and have some empathy, or even want to have empathy for another human being. Other comments? All right. Well, I've come to the end of my slides and my clips for tonight. Anyway, there'll be more. Does anybody have any kind of reflections on all the things we talked about tonight? I know I've just been all over the place, but appreciate your thoughts and comments. Anybody got anything they want to share before? Yes, Sarah. Okay. Put in a plug.
And you said that you're going to make sure someone's going to have it before, so they can get home and watch it. Here on, and I want to know your opinion, about basketball from a great state of Maine.
I think they're wonderful, particularly when their last name is Flag.
I know.
So go, what is, are you Outlanders or Inlanders in Maine? What's the term? He's okay, but there's a phrase for folks from Maine they use about themselves. Downeasters? Downeasters? Okay, all right. Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, see, we all have a heritage, and that's worthy of inclusion, and worthy of charity, and lighthearted or heavier, for sure. Anybody else have a comment? All right, well, we'll stop for tonight. Look forward to seeing you next week. Same place. Thanks, everybody.
We still brought some snacks in the back.